Hi everyone, I'm Dave Butler.
I'm Grace Freeman.
Welcome to Don't Miss This.
Our weekly scripture study class.
Got it, Grace. Good job. You guys
Learn and improve.
Hope you loved that little visit to Nauvoo last week. I seriously love that city. I genuinely it is. And just the stories from there, and you walk into that city and there is just a sense of like encouragement and happiness. They don't get to stay there. There's also some really sad stories about that, but I just feel like you look at the whole span of church history and you're just like, look at these glorious moments, Kirtland and in Nauvoo and right, all these things. And like, then they're interspersed by Zion's Camp and the Trek West that's coming and Liberty Jail. And it's all like the history of the whole church is almost like the history of somebody's life. Like if you heard their bio at a funeral and they were just like, look at these like sad moments, but then look at these like also awesome, happy moments too. And I love just being in this Nauvoo spot because it doesn't mean that there aren't any problems, but in Nauvoo, God reveals, I think, better than anywhere else, the opportunities for grace and strength and hope amidst some of the hardships that they're experiencing. Like he prepares them in Nauvoo for one of their hardest seasons, the martyrdom of the prophet and the trek west. And so what if we could learn and be trained and be prepared for our difficult seasons as well, like from what we learned both last week in 124 and also today in section 125 through something.
Which feels so encouraging, especially like, I think it just gives you a little reminder of the way God's plan works, is that he is really careful with his people and very kind.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he knows, I really do understand that mortality is going to be difficult and tragic, and there's going to be sad things and things that you don't understand, but there will also be Nauvoo.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Again and again and again.
Yeah.
Not just one time. Y'all, if you don't know yet, next year's Old Testament, and we're so thrilled about it. If you're intimidated by the Old Testament, we're going to make it fantastic. That sounded actually a little presumptuous, but it's already fantastic, and we're going to help you. We're going to all discover the fantasticness.
We're just going to realize.
Together. We, in addition to making the Old Testament like one of your favorite books, like all together, we want to just help people create houses of faith, believing homes, or refuges, like we talked about last week. Yeah. That sounded funny, plural. We created these things that might help you in that. We created them because we thought that they would help us and maybe they'll help you. So all of our product is available for next year. Our resources are available to just help you create that house of faith and to fall in love with the Old Testament, to teach the Old Testament, to share, to make the Old Testament a part of your life, every single one of them. You can go back and see our descriptions or check them out online, but the journal is so good this year. It's the perfect size. It's got reflection questions, digging deep sections for really getting into the stories, background, symbolism, the tip-ins that you'll glue in that make your Bible become a study Bible, things to put in your house, the read it, live it. Send your kids every day or yourself with a challenge to live out the scriptures. And then the posters that stand as that reminder, just that faith-filled decoration, small decoration in your house. So I just think they're so awesome. I'm really proud of them. I think that they're going to be so helpful in helping us to fall in love with the Old Testament and create those households of faith. So you can get these on goodnewsbrandco.com, or if you want to go pick them up physically from a place, you can go pick them up at a Deseret bookstore. So just get ready for next year.
And let me just say this so fast because I think it's really true, is one time at the beginning of this year, I read something about goals and how like there's like two things that help you be successful in your goals. And one of them is choosing something that you're excited about. And the second is like getting rid of any like distractions or whatever. The second one, fine, whatever. But the first one I like because I like to be excited. And I feel like that is why I love all of those things, is because the scriptures will win you over. And that can be your goal and it will like change your life and your heart will change. But there is something about like getting something that makes you excited about it that I feel like is the part that my soul needs. Yeah. Now I'm like, okay, I need to like look forward to it and that's going to help me.
And same. Really, that journal, when I grab it, I think I'm really excited.
Same.
I just feel smarter.
And why do I really love this year that it all looks like the same, like it like all matches each other? And like when you were just holding it, I was like, that looks so pretty.
It's the packaging. It's awesome, you guys. It's awesome. Okay, now so there's heads up for next year. Let's jump into these sections 125 to 128 here in Nauvoo. Last summer, you may know that Grace and I both love HXP. Grace has been as a trip leader on all those trips. I send my kids on them, have been on them together with them. I just love the organization. And every summer they have a training for all of their trip leaders. And this last summer at that training, the staff up at the office and the people who put on that training did something where they called and they interviewed every single one of the trip leaders. I can't remember how many there are.
Like 200 or something?
Yeah, so a lot, right? And called and interviewed them without them knowing what they were doing, just to find out, like, hey, what are some of the happy things in your life, sad things in your life? What are you looking forward to? Just whatever that interview was like. And based off of what they learned in that interview, there was a night during the training where everybody came to their spot, their dinner spot, and there was a gift. And that gift was so personalized to that person, to the story that had been discovered about them. Like one of them was a lunchbox, like, and I can't even remember, like it was like an old like Spider-Man lunchbox or something that they'd gotten on eBay because that was their favorite thing when they were growing up. Cereal from another country, probably to remind them about their mission. One of the boys who was there, his father had passed away and he was a fly fisherman, and there was one of the flies that his father had made that they took and they turned into a keychain for him. So they were just the sweetest, most personalized gifts. And like the feeling in that room was so tender and so palpable. And like it was like you could tell how loved people felt because of how particular those gifts were for them. Now, would they have felt loved if someone had come in and given everybody a $50 gift card to Costa Vida or something? Yeah, for sure, right? And that would have been a fantastic gift to give. And if you're on staff at HXP, there's a great idea for you.
Take a note.
People love those
Gift cards.
pork burritos, But the fact that they were so specific and so generalized, so like particularized to those people is what made them so special. And that's the way I feel reading, and maybe I'm thinking the way the saints felt reading section 125, and then we'll see in 126 something similar. But verse 1 of 125 is like, what is the will of the Lord concerning the saints in the territory of Iowa? And I just love that there's a lot of sections in here that are super general, but the Lord was giving this particular direction and help to the saints who were living in the territory of Iowa. So Iowa was across the river from Nauvoo. And Nauvoo is obviously going to become like this like golden child, right? The temple's going to be there. No one goes and visits Iowa on a church history trip. No one knows that people lived there or anything like that. And so what could have been just this forgotten group of saints who lived on the other side of the river in the forgotten part of church history, 125 is a reminder that God sees them and God has particular direction and specific kinds of gifts and help for the Iowa saints too. Maybe you feel like the Iowa saints. You're like, I'm not the golden child. I'm not the Nauvoo kid. I'm not recognized and seen but I'm the Iowa saint. Section 125 is for you. That reminder. There's just a couple of verses that are there. And one of the things I think is sweet about this is when he says, I want you to gather yourselves together to be prepared for that which is in store for a time to come. That not only is God blessing them in their present, but he's preparing for things in their future also. And one of those things that may be worth mentioning is when all the saints leave Nauvoo, they leave and they cross over into that place and they actually become the hand and the heart of the Lord for all of the escaping saints, which I think is just one sweet way of looking at that.
Well, and I think that's something to really pause and think about when you read section 125 is that was an individualized piece of revelation for those saints in particular. But I also wonder how many of them thought, okay, I'm glad that he's speaking to me, but this isn't the law I wanted. Why didn't we get to have Nauvoo? Why didn't we get to live with all the other saints? And why do we have to build another city? Why does he always want us to build another city? And all the cities keep getting destroyed. And all we have to do is keep building cities just to get run out of them or whatever. And I think there is something that in specific seasons of our life, we need to remember that God will speak to us, personalized and individualized, and we don't maybe understand exactly why he's asking us to do what he's asking us to do. But what I love is that he truly trusted those saints. He knew that they would do it. He knew they wouldn't complain, and he knew that they would come to the rescue when other people needed them the most. And I think there's going to be moments and times in our lives when we're confused about the lot that God's given us and why has he made me do this, and this doesn't make sense, and I don't want to do this. I would rather be having that person's life because it seems easier. And trusting that God knows you, God knows your season, God knows your circumstances, God knows your heart and who you have the capacity to help. And he is setting you up, not just for right now, but also that they might be prepared for that which is in store for a time to come.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a sweet chapter, like easily overlooked. And it just almost becomes like a representation of all of the sections in here. Remember, we keep talking about this, that line that we read in the introduction, that each of these revelations were an answer to prayer, to a specific need or to a specific situation. And I just think 125 is another reminder about that God cares about the particulars of our lives. And even if you feel like the Iowa Saints on the other side of the river, here's one more reminder in this book that God is both preparing you and sees you and has every intention to bless you.
You're going to see another specific example of this, of a God who speaks to individuals, in section 126. And this section is for Brigham Young. That's who the section was. The revelation was received for him. But it starts out in such a tender way. Dear and well-beloved brother.
That's so darling.
I know.
That's how I really want my patriarchal blessing
I
to
just
start.
thought that same thing. I was like, I want every letter that anyone's ever written to me to start like that. My patriarchal blessing, everything. You love that that's how it's addressed. And what I began to think when I read this section is you read that and you love it, but that is really easy to like just say and not mean. Any compliment, it's really easy to be like, oh, like people love you. Like I love you so much. Like don't worry, like you are dear to me. And what happens next in our heads, I think maybe at least mine, because like I'm a flawed human, is I begin to think like, oh, but you don't really know me.
Yeah.
There's like, you wouldn't really say that if you knew my heart. You wouldn't really say that if you saw what I've done. You wouldn't really say that about me if you knew who I really was. And the Lord, in fact, does. And maybe Brigham Young had a little bit of that moment in him when he said, you are dear and well beloved to me. Like, I adore you. And then what happens next is it almost feels like in verse 2, he says, and I'm going to prove it. I'm not just like hearing words in the streets about who you are. It's not just like I like saw your report card and you got all A's.
Or
Verse
a general
2,
like Valentine that you hand out to the whole
yeah,
class.
that he bought at
right?
Walgreens or
Yeah,
whatever.
that
That's
everyone
like,
got the same
oh
one.
yeah, like I better start out with something nice because like I'm writing to you directly.
Yeah.
And then in verse number 2, he says, I have seen your labor. I've seen it. I am willing to call you dear and beloved to me. And I have seen everything you've done. I've seen the work you've put in. I've seen the hours that you spent up at night so scared. I've seen and heard your prayers. I've seen you get down on your knees every single night and pray for the work that you're doing and wake up the very next morning and do it all over again. I have seen that all. I've seen the moments when you say, oh, I should have done better. And the moments that you said, I'm really proud of what I've done. And also the moments that you say, oh, I should have done that and I didn't. And I just messed that one up. And he says, I have seen it all. And to him, he is still dear and well beloved. And I was with my nieces and nephews this past weekend, and I have one nephew, and he's like kind of crazy. Like he's just like, he is loud and excited about everything, and his mind goes like probably 900 miles per hour faster than any like little boy's mind has ever gone in the history of the world. And like he is just like going crazy all the time. And like that kind of personality is like not like great at school. Like that's like not their favorite place
Schools are not
ever.
designed for kids like that.
Yeah, and like teachers usually that's like their nightmare. Like they pray before the first day of school to not have like a personality like that in their class. And so I was like asking how school's going, and I was talking to his parents, and they said, "Oh, he has the best teacher right now because she keeps giving him awards for being a good listener." And over and over and over, he keeps coming home and like he like gets all these awards for being a good listener. And then they were joking. He's like, that my brother was like, I bet that they're just saying that to like force him into being one, like to trick him into it, like rewarding good behavior. And so then I was like asking him, I was like, hey, like my nephew, I was like, I heard that you're so good at listening. And then it was so cute because he paused and he looked at me and he just started listing all these times that his teacher told him he was a good listener. And he really was. He was being a good listener. And it would have been fine if his teacher was just like trying to trick him into being a good listener for sure. But that boy has changed the way he views himself as a student because the teacher showed him moments when he was living like that. She saw his works and said, I will speak into who you really are. And I think sometimes we need that reminder with God that it's not that God is just calling us loved. It's not that God just looks down at us and says we are dear to him. He looks and he sees everything we're doing and he claims us and he adores us and he still calls us loved even then.
Yeah. Those two words I think are just awesome to me, where he's like, I've seen your labor and your toil in these journeys, right? That I've seen how you've tried and I've seen where it's been hard for you or because of your personality or the circumstances. But the end of that verse 1 is like, your offering is acceptable to me. It wasn't a perfect offering. We know that about Brigham, about me, about you. It's not a perfect offering, but it's one that the Lord accepted. It's the same word he used when he saw the temple. So I accept this great gift that you've given to me. Brigham Young in this section is actually sort of getting a little bit of a shift in his responsibility. And now he's going to be staying closer to home to be closer to Joseph. And those of us who know church history can see the writing on the wall here that the Lord is preparing the next president of the church. And he's keeping him close to Joseph for this season. It's sort of like a switch in what his calling and responsibilities are going to be as you read in 126. And I just have been thinking about this section because I feel like it's really easy to dog on Brigham Young. Like I feel like I've heard a lot of people that there's books written about that you can take a quote out of context or in context or whatever. Listen, I never met him and I don't know him, but I have heard some criticisms about Brigham Young. And it's just really easy to find criticisms about people and about leadership of the church. But I do appreciate and adore that it begins with the way that the Lord sees him. My dear and well-beloved brother, Brigham Young. I know people see a certain side of you, only one side of you, the public-facing one that's so easy to criticize. He says, but I've seen all of your labor and all of your toil and all of your offerings. Was Brigham Young this and this and this, like adjectives that you've probably heard about him? Again, yes, maybe. I don't know. But the Lord sees another side of him. And the Lord sees that in section 126, that he came home to an unfinished cabin because he gave his time and his money and his efforts to try and bring other people the gospel. He saw him when he was in the back of the wagon, sick as a dog, but still willing to go out and take the good news to other people. He saw him trudge through the heat and the mud of across the United States to go on a rescue mission for people who needed him most and stayed loyal and faithful to that mission the whole time. He sees the part that's up and coming where he stands up in general conference and will say, go out and rescue them. The Lord sees all those parts of him. And I think it's worth us considering too to see the dear and well-beloved parts of other people. It's really easy to criticize and find what is brash or not my personality or whatever, but to take the eyes of the Lord and the heart of the Lord and see what is dear and beloved in people. So I love this section, 126. 127 and 128 are really interesting because these were both letters that Joseph Smith wrote to the saints. And they had to be letters and couldn't be sermons because you may know this from the history of the church. The governor of Missouri, Governor Boggs, who is the one who issued the extermination order, who made it legal in the state of Missouri to kill a Mormon, right? There was an assassination attempt on him. Now, if I were a detective And I laid out the facts and saw like, oh, look, he signed an extermination order for this church. Then right after that, somebody tried to take him out. I would think, oh, okay. So there is now a warrant out for the arrest of Joseph Smith, and there's accusations against Joseph Smith and the leadership of the church for orchestrating this and for doing this. So Joseph is actually in hiding during 127 and 128 because the same state he was in Liberty Jail for unjustly is now after him again, and he's like, oh my goodness, I cannot do this.
What could he even do?
Yeah. So as you read 127 and 128, you're going to catch hints of that, like the way 127 starts. For as much as the Lord has revealed unto me that my enemies, both in Missouri and in this state, are again in pursuit of me, and may I add, they're in pursuit of me without a cause, and they don't have the least shadow or coloring of justice or right on their side in the getting up of these prosecutions against me, inasmuch as their pretensions are founded in falsehood of the blackest dye. It seems like Joseph Smith doesn't agree with the warrants out, for his arrest.
Got to read between the lines.
Yeah,
For that.
but he says, so I've thought it wisdom in me to leave this place for a short season. And some of that time he spends, and I actually got a chance to go see this have you ever seen his secret attic? Oh, in his house. I don't know if they're showing it on tours. It used to be owned by the Community of Christ Church. And so sometimes like one of their tour guides would show you if they're, that there is this hidden attic in his house in Nauvoo. And I've heard some church historians say that perhaps that is where he wrote either parts or all of 127 and 128. But you will read hints of him being in that place. And oh my gosh, can you just imagine what that feels like for him? That it's like we finally got out of Liberty Jail. And he's like, are we done with this kind of stuff? And then however much time passes, and it's like, oh my goodness gracious, again. And 127 and 128, I think, are some of those sections that we can look to when we kind of feel like we've been given the left, right hook and uppercut against us, and we see some of like the counsel that Joseph gives, and I think it becomes great advice for all of us. Like this is his response to this this season of his life, this one of like, being pursued and chased and falsely accused. And he's like, all right, this happens, but this is what I'm going to do. Here's just 4 or 5 different principles in here. Number 2, he talks about this being the common lot of his life. It seems like I was ordained, he says, from the foundation of the world for some good end or bad, whatever you want to call it. And if I'm designed and created by God in heaven to do this great work, then certainly there would be a target on my back and somebody's trying to stop me. So he sees the target as a compliment in a sense, right? And then he says, nevertheless, God knows all things. Deep water is what I am wont to swim in. And the opposite of deep is shallow. And Joseph says, I am deep in trials and afflictions and perils, but at least I'm not shallow. Deep water is teaching me and changing me in a way that shallow experiences just can't. I feel like Paul to glory in tribulation because then I get to experience the deliverance. So that verse 2 is that first principle, to see tribulation in that eternal perspective and what God can and is doing. And isn't that interesting to say this bad thing is happening to me right now? It's like, but I'm excited to see how God delivers me from it.
Well, and I think it's so human of him, even when you see the part when at the beginning of verse number 2, when he says, this is obviously my lot in life, is that I'm just going to experience all of these hard and devastating things of humanity. But then he says, and for what cause it seems mysterious. And I love that you just get a glimpse of his humanity for just 1 second. He's like, I understand that I can have internal perspective and I can grow from this. And I know that it's going to be good for me in the end, or whatever they all say. But I love that in the middle there, he does say, like, I don't even know why this is happening. Yeah. I don't. I just really don't know. And I think that sometimes it's okay for us to give ourselves permission in mortality to say, you know what? I know that I can grow for this. I know that it's going to be good for me in the end and it's going to change my heart and have a great eternal perspective, and also at the same time say, but I have absolutely no idea why this is happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, the second principle is in verse 4, where the Lord says, "Let the works of my temple and all the works which I've appointed unto you continue and not cease." It's so easy that when this distraction is going on to just let it consume us. And the Lord's like, "Don't let it stop you from the good work that you are doing." That is so easy to be accused, to have something go wrong, and then to think, "I'm just quitting everything. I don't want to do anything anymore then," because every time I try to do something good, bad things seem to happen. So I'm hanging up the shoes and the hat. I don't know, both. I don't know what the phrase
I
is.
don't either. Should
Everybody on that,
hat,
but I do hang up the hat.
hang up the hat?
Yeah.
I think it's.
But the shoes too.
But take off your
I don't know
shoes.
why
Do
anyone's
it.
hanging
Hanging
up
up
shoes.
everything.
I don't know why anyone's hanging up their shoes. But that can be a temptation to feel that. And I love this word in verse 4, where he just says, "Let your diligence and your perseverance and your patience and your works be redoubled." And I feel like we are in a time right now where there's a left-right punch happening to a lot of us. And Joseph takes that as an opportunity to say, well, then I'm going to redouble down on a couple things. And what I'm going to redouble down are on diligence in doing the good work called, and perseverance. I'm doubling down on not giving up. And I'm doubling down on patience with God and with other people. And I'm doubling down on love. And I'm doubling down on grace. And I'm doubling down on mercy. And I think, what if we just took those opportunities in our lives as invitations to redouble down on the principles of goodness that Jesus showed us how? He doubled down on the cross on forgiveness. And he doubled down while he was on the cross in care and tenderness for other people. And he doubled down on just the things that make him who he was. And we see that same thing in his servant here in Joseph. Okay, two more quick things that I think we can find in 127. One of them, because I think it's so funny. But the first one of the last two in verse 8 is a promise from the Lord. "I am about to restore many things to this earth." In this place, hold on, let me give you the funny one, and then I'm going to come back to what I was going to say in 11, okay? I should have done 11 first, verse 11, where he says this: "I close my letter for the present, for the want." I wish I had more time. "For the enemy is on the alert. And as the Savior said, the prince of this world cometh." He's talking about the devil. "But he hath nothing in me." And I don't know how I never knew that verse
And why
as
does
a
no
high
one ever
schooler.
talk about
No one
it?
just
They need to teach that.
yeah, and because the David Butler translation is like, "The devil's coming, but he got nothing on me." Right? I just don't know if that is
You
what
like hardly had to translate it. It's like really
it
saying
really
that.
is. It really is. So I just think that where he just says, "My prayer to God is that you all may be saved." That last verse. Look at the end of verse 2. "I shall triumph over all my enemies, for the Lord hath spoken it." I believe him. I'm doubling down on believing his promises also. So that one is just so cool. But that 8, verse 8, "I'm about to restore many things to this earth." And he kind of introduces that at the beginning of 128, where he just says, okay, I have had this subject, verse 1, occupy my mind and press itself upon my feelings in the strongest since I've been pursued by my enemies. There was something about the pursuit of his enemies that triggered these thoughts. Maybe it's the time that he had in the attic. Maybe it's the context. I don't know what it is. But since he began to be pursued by his enemies, now he's having these thoughts occupy his mind and press themselves upon his feelings in the strongest. And this moment in time that Joseph would have said no thank you to on the menu of life actually is becoming a window into some of our most glorious and unique and beautiful truths and doctrines that are going to be restored. This moment of persecution is kindling the flame of faithful and beautiful truths. Like and there's something about that that's like redoubling down on like understanding my purpose and where we're going from here. And so that is, I think, just fantastic. We're seeing I think, just really, really good counsel and advice and life principles in this. And I think all these are worth taking and asking ourselves, having conversations. Okay, this is the way things are right now. So what do I want to redouble down on? Okay, this is the way things are right now. What can I focus on? What promise of God can I focus on in this period? So these are really great, but they're also, I think, super applicable, easy to talk about and to practice out.
100%. Section 127 and 128 are going into those doctrines, and the doctrine it's mostly focusing on is baptisms for the dead. And that wasn't like necessarily, that happened earlier. The revelation for baptisms for the dead happened earlier, but this was just more detailed and more specific and more information about baptisms for the dead.
And I'll say,
yeah,
and like you'll see in 128, and starting to move in a further direction too. Like we know, if you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you know that there are more temple ordinances and doctrines to come, more word for the dead to come, sealings of siblings and families and spouses to come. And baptisms for the dead is like almost like the foot in the door, and you can see it in 128, like Joseph starts to like, hold on. I taught this and I loved it, but I'm starting to realize
that's only the beginning.
This might be just the beginning of something really good.
Yes, 100%. And what happens is this doctrine was actually taught in such an interesting way because Joseph Smith actually taught it at a funeral. And it's funny because I read that there's a commentary that talks about Joseph like and teaching this at the funeral about baptisms for the dead, which like a little bit of you is like, I guess it like does like match a funeral, but like nonetheless you're also kind of like it's like he's doing a talk. Like it's like I don't know. Like it almost feels like a little bit like you're like, okay. But there's this commentary and it just said, there was actually a woman in at the funeral, attending the funeral, who had lost her teenage son. And maybe just maybe Joseph noticed her and knew that maybe there was a moment that his words could touch more hearts than just a couple, and one heart in particular about a grieving mother. And when you hear that and you think about the possibility of that story and that woman sitting there listening to Joseph teaching this doctrine, I think it really humanizes this doctrine of baptisms for the dead. And I think sometimes we hear baptisms for the dead and we just like think about like chlorine water and like the jumpsuit, and it's just like, okay, yeah, we do baptisms for the dead.
Or whatever.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, we just like go through quick and you do 5 names and it's like really fast or whatever. And hearing that story, it just made me pause and think about how truly like groundbreaking and beautiful and healing this revelation is, not just then but even still today.
Yeah.
That we believe in a God who never runs out of giving chances, a God who wants to do absolutely anything he possibly can to help as many of his children as he possibly can. And that is what baptisms of the dead is. It is God looking down at us and saying, you know what, my plan includes all of you, and you're all going to help each other, and you're all going to walk back home together. And that is baptisms for the dead, is being willing to say in all ordinances that we do for the people who have passed, is pausing and saying, someone loved this person, and this was someone's mom or someone's little brother. This was someone who had a birthday and who celebrated Christmas. And this was someone who lived all the way across the world, but like probably spent their mornings like getting ready for school, whatever they did, and pausing and realizing like that's a real person who God adores, who says, listen, someone's mom is going to cry at their baptism. And someone's mom wept because they didn't have the chance to be baptized before. And I love that we believe in a God who never stops wanting to help his kids ever, no matter what, but also one that is going to whisper truth into someone who's talking heart like Joseph and say like, someone out there needs to hear this. So speak to them. And there's this one little line in verse number 5, and it's like kind of like a little bit like funny.
And can I just say this?
Yes.
As you were just talking, I just keep thinking about that promise from the Savior, the happy ending promise that he says, one day I will wipe away all tears from their eyes. And I was just thinking about how somebody goes and does a baptisms for the dead, and they're actually helping that happen, right? Like that promise is coming true right now, that we instead in the place of the Savior, as his disciples and servants can begin to dry the tears and the things that people were mourning over.
Yeah, and change the story.
Right.
100%. And there's this little line, it's at the very beginning of verse number 5. And it just says, you may think this order of things to be very particular. You might read this and think, why did it need to be so specific? It did not need to be that serious. Why are you taking this so seriously?
Yeah, and he's talking about like the recorders. Like, make sure
Yes.
there's a recorder in each of the wards, and then a general recorder, and get the names, and da-da-da.
And it's going to be serious. And it seems serious when you read it. And it's like kind of like one of those
Kind of
things that's
particular.
yeah, it's like a handbook, and it's not like a vague handbook. It's like, here, this is how it's going to go.
Because the other side you want to say is like, God knows.
Yeah, it's not that serious.
He's going to figure this out.
It's going to be fine.
Which is also true about him, right?
Yeah, 100%. But I think the reason that I like that so much is because we can go do baptisms for the dead or any work for the dead, and we're just like, oh, it's my Tuesday morning and I'm gonna go before school, and like it's just gonna, like I'm just like gonna hurry quick and go through and do baptisms for the dead, or like it's a youth temple trip or whatever, or like anything that we're just doing, and we're just like, oh yeah, this is just like my routine. But it's those people's very only experience with baptism. And it's those people, those angels, and those people that didn't have the chance to get baptized. It is their moment that they have been waiting for, that they cannot wait for. And it just makes me pause and think, I love so deeply that God cares about every particular.
Yeah.
That he cares about the order of things, because he says, I want this to be just as special, just as important for each of those souls as it was for you when you got baptized here. And that means that we're going to have to be a little bit more specific. And there's going to be recorders, and I don't want to mess this up because they deserve that. Yeah,
it seems like being particular is a love language.
Yeah.
And we saw that in section 125. And we saw that in section 126, right? I'm particular about these things because they're people.
Yep.
And they matter. And I'm going to be super particular about Jane and Jones and Christian and Ella and my kids' baptisms and their special moments in their life.
Yeah, and you're not going to want someone to forget to write it down.
Yeah. It's like we're going to be particular because these are people. And people matter, and being particular shows to people that they matter. Being particular is not my gift, but I do appreciate that love language so much, and seeing this here. Before we get to just the end of 128, this is so random, everybody, but I thought about this as you were talking. Back in section 126, this well-beloved brother, Brigham Young, I think this might be a cool activity to do. Get out a piece of paper and write a dear and well-beloved letter to someone that you know really well and that you care about a lot. And what would you say to them? And what would you encourage them in? In what ways would you strengthen their faith and help them understand who they are? And do that. Do that activity. Write out that letter. But then I want you to look at the letter and cross out the name and put your own name in there. And just realize that that's the same way God would speak to you. It's hard for us to speak to ourselves the way that God would. But as we talk about this particular nature of God, that he sees these individuals, the mom at the baptism and Brigham riding in the wagon on his way home and the saints in Iowa, I just want that activity to be one that we realize that he's just as particular about you, and he's just as particular about me. So anyway, sorry, that was a little bit of a kind of a detour, but this is awesome. This section ends. If you are in a place of just feeling down and out, section 128 is where you want to come. To be encouraged again, to just feel like the woo of what it is that we're a part of. Verse 9 starts, it may seem to some to be a very bold doctrine that we talk of. This power which records or binds on earth and binds in heaven. And we can understand that some people may scoff at that and say, that's a little bit bold of y'all to believe that that's actually what's happening inside temple baptismal fonts and inside your churches and inside, right? But it may seem to some, but then he says, nevertheless, in all ages of the world, whenever the Lord has given a dispensation of the priesthood to any man by actual revelation, this power has always been given. This is why we send missionaries out to all the world. This is why we post a million things on social media accounts, because God has made us stewards of this power, of this privilege for all people in the world, for this gift. And yes, it may seem bold, but we have to be bold about it. We have to let people know, because there's grieving moms out there and grieving brothers and dads and siblings and sons about their life situations, about things that are happening, about mistakes that they've made. And they've got to know. They need to know that who the Father is and who the Son is, and the way that they're pouring out their love in particular ways upon this earth. And Joseph starts to just feel it, man. He just starts to because once that gets in you and you start to go, you see 19. I would say this. If you want to know, do I get it? Has it caught me? Am I on fire with what this really is that I have, that's been gifted to me? If you can respond in the way 19 does, then you're getting it. You're getting it, because he says, listen, 18, let me back up one. There are things which have never been revealed from the foundation of the world, that have been kept and hid, that will be revealed to kids in the dispensation of the fullness of times. There's lessons happening in primary that the rest of the world needs to know. And he says, now, what do we hear in the gospel that we've received? A voice of gladness, exclamation point. A voice of mercy from heaven. A voice of truth out of the earth. Glad tidings for the dead. A voice of gladness for the living. Glad tidings of great joy. How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of those that take those glad tidings of good things. To the rest of the world, to Zion, to the rest of the world, thy God reigneth. And as the dews of Carmel, so will that daily dose of goodness that dew is for the earth, and so shall the knowledge and the goodness of God be upon them. This is it keeps going. It keeps going, and he starts to remember, right? In the attic. He's in the attic in August. This is in August. So he's sweating.
Dripping.
I don't know if you've ever been to Nauvoo.
He can't even read.
Because it's the ink is running, right? But he just starts to think through his life, and he's just oh, glad tidings from Gomorrah. And it's fun to read 20 and think about what moment in his life and in the history of the restoration is he talking about. Moroni, an angel from heaven, a book to be revealed, the voice of the Lord in Fayette, the voice of Michael on the banks of the Susquehanna River, the voice of Peter and James and John, all possessing keys of the kingdom and the dispensation, the voice of God himself in the chamber of Father Whitmer, the voice of Michael and Gabriel and Rachel, Raphael, and Rachel probably came too. She's such a sweetheart. Diverse angels from Michael or Adam down to the present time, all declaring their dispensation, their rights, their keys, their honors, their majesty, their glories, their powers of the priesthood, line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little, there a little, giving us consolation by holding forth that which is to come. All of these events and all of these angels and all of these declarations confirm our hope, is what the end of verse 21 says. Brethren, in 22, sistren, everyone, shall we not go on in so great a cause? I know Missouri's after us. Governor Boggs, accusations. It's still a little swampy in Nauvoo. But we've got a great cause. We've got something worth taking to the world. We've got something worth celebrating over. So go forward and not backward. Courage, on to the victory. Let your hearts rejoice and be exceedingly glad. Let the earth break forth into singing. I will stop reading. I could just keep going. I don't even know at what word to stop myself on, but please don't stop yourself and keep reading to the end of that chapter. And this is what the tip-ins are for the week to slide in there. reminders of these glad tidings of great joy. And what an awesome discussion to have. What reason do we have to like not focus on what's going wrong or what we've done wrong, but look, what God has given us is so much bigger and greater. We're not ignoring any of it, but it's happening in the midst of it. The good news is happening in the midst of the things that are hard.
And we can read his list of all the things that like made him want to cheer and shout with gladness. But I think what a powerful moment to pause and also to create your own. And when you think about your life and what God is doing and has done for you, and sitting and thinking, what has happened in my life that makes me feel like I have glad tidings, that I'm full of goodness, what experiences, what moments, and just go through and make that list, write them actually down. Joseph did. Why shouldn't we?
Yeah.
All the moments when we have experienced his goodness and all the ones that we say, oh, God was so good in that moment, I can't help but like want to tell the world about it.
Yeah. Yeah. What are your glad tidings of great joy? And then the poster that you want to hang out this week in conjunction with that list. Make that, this is what you might want to do. Make that list. So everyone sit down, make that list, and then hang up this poster as a reminder of it. Hang up your lists next to it too, if you want. Put them on the fridge. Put them on the stair.
We should do that.
Just put them all up.
Yes.
Listen to this quote that's on here that everyone in your family is going to pass by every day. Make sure they see it, so when they see gladness, they think of this. Happiness is the object and design of our existence, and will be the end thereof if we pursue that path that leads to it. Go forward, not backward. We have a voice of gladness. We have glad tidings, things to rejoice over. So I'm so happy for sections like these. And I just love that it came in, the best doctrine came at a funeral.
Yeah.
And these awesome reminders come in a sweaty attic, right? And just a reminder to us of God sent his son to save the world in a barn, and he did it on a cross. And just like even in the midst of these hard things, the most beautiful truths and revelations and experiences are born from them. It's just awesome.
Oh, we love it.
We want to cheer.
Okay.
We should do
We
cheer.
should cheer.
Cheer at the end of this, right?
Cheer.
On a walk, in the car, wherever you are. All right, y'all. We will see you next week.